Welcome to Scofield Farm. Today we are going to make fermented garlic scapes. I have another video about this, but in case you missed that one, this is going to be just about fermenting the garlic scapes. I'm going to talk to you about what garlic scapes are real fast. I have a video where we harvested them. And these are garlic scapes right here. I just washed them in the sink so they're freshly cleaned. We harvested them in 2 rounds. Garlic scapes come specifically from hardneck garlic. In our garden, we love garlic. We have over 300 heads of garlic planted, and we grow softneck garlic, which is the type of garlic that you traditionally buy at the grocery store because it's great for long-term storage. It's also the type of garlic you can braid. And then we also grow hardneck garlic, which are the ones that put up these really fun, curly little scapes. They're actually the flower stem. If you look closely right here, you can see that it wants to produce a flower. And so we pull these off, and it gives the garlic the signal to put the energy into growing the bulb larger and not try to make a flower to have seeds. So I usually count about 3 weeks from when I harvest the scape to when my hardneck garlic are ready to pick. We also like to look at the leaves on the garlic, and when about half of them have dried out and died, that's usually a good indication that the bulbs underneath the ground are ready to harvest. You don't want them to be too separated and pulling away from each other. That means you've waited a little too long. You also don't want them to not have become bulbs and are almost like an onion looking thing underground. That means you're a little too early. So the scapes are a great indication of kind of pacing yourself on harvesting hardneck garlic. A lot of people say hardneck garlic is better in cooler environments, climates. We don't live in a very cool climate. We're actually in Zone 9B in Northern California, but we have found that hardneck garlic grows here just fine, and we enjoy the scapes a lot. That's the whole reason I ever started growing hardneck garlic, is because I heard about the scapes. I thought, I'd like to try that. They're in different fancy recipes and different restaurants. Now, the scapes aren't shelf stable like a garlic is. You can see right behind me, I have some of my garlic from last year. This is almost a year-old garlic. It's just fine. We're still using it. Shelf stable because we cured it. However, scapes have to be refrigerated. They have to be fermented or pickled, or they need to be dehydrated and dried completely, because these are, they're more perishable than the garlic is. So what we're gonna do today is we're going to ferment them. There's lots of fun ways to use them that aren't fermenting. That's just our favorite. We love a good old-fashioned salt brine ferment, and we use them on sandwiches, on burgers, especially burgers, in scrambled eggs, in salads. There's lots of ways to use them. There are lots of ways to eat garlic scapes. They are in fancy pasta recipes where you saute them in olive oil or butter. You can make a pesto out of these, and I would chop them first before putting them in the food processor, but use these instead of the basil in your pesto or in addition to the basil. Sometimes we put sage leaves and chives in addition to our basil and pesto, so that would be kind of a fun way to make an Italian herb blend with the garlic scapes in it. We have sauteed them, put them in scrambled eggs, put them in a quiche. I'm trying to think of other ways. There's just so many ways. They're very versatile. They have the nice garlicky flavor. I think they're kind of spicy. Some people say they're a little more mild than the garlic, but they're really, really good. So all I'm gonna do, this is a super simple way that we do it. You could do more of the vinegar pickle of them, where you did a vinegar kind of brine, but I like the salt brine. So that is what I'm gonna do. I'm going to put these kind of in little circular patterns. I use these clamp jars, and you can actually get these pretty much anywhere. They're like the old-fashioned Italian clamp jars with the rub-it gasket, and go like this, seal them shut. And the cool thing about using clamp jars for ferments is you actually do not have to burp your ferment at all. I do all of my ferments in these. We even do our kombucha's second ferment in the ones that look like little Coke bottles. They have a rubber gasket. They have a clamp as well. The nice thing about fermenting in clamp jars is you don't have to babysit them. They are hassle-free. You do whatever ferment, as I said, today we're doing garlic scapes, but you do whatever ferment in your jar. You put in your salt brine water, then you close it and you put it up in the dark cupboard, and then you walk away. Like, just make a reminder of when you're gonna check it, but you don't have to go babysit and burp every single day. You don't have to worry about these exploding, because the rubber gasket moves just enough to let the CO2 out so that you don't have a buildup of pressure, but it doesn't let the contaminants from the room air in, so you're not contaminating your ferment with outside bacteria that could cause things to spoil or to mold. So this is like, I researched fermenting, specifically sauerkraut, for 6 months before I started, and this was like a dozen or more years ago. I can't actually remember. I'm trying to think of which house I was in is how I'm trying to time it, but this was a long time ago. And I, looked at the expensive little systems, like the little bubblers and that kind of stuff. They're not necessary. This is the way people have fermented for hundreds of years in the European countries. This is how I do it. I do not have problems with spoilage. I do not have problems with things exploding. I have never, ever had anything explode because this lets off the pressure. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna actually kind of go with the curved nature of the garlic scapes, and I am going to fill up the jar, and then I'm going to put some of my salt in my filtered water. With ferment, you always want to do filtered water. If you don't have access to filtered water, then you could boil your water and then leave it out all the way till when it cools. What you basically want to do is you want to get that chlorine off of your water, because that kind of inhibits the salt from multiplying the good bacteria that's going to preserve your food. So you don't want to have the heavy chlorine in the treated water from like water districts. If you had well water, that might be different. We don't have well water, so I can't speak to that. I can just speak to, we do filtered water. If we didn't, we would boil it and let it cool. So I'm just gonna make these into little curls, and I kind of doing a layer since I want to use that whole surface area in there. Get the most volume of scapes into a jar. I don't know if I'm gonna need 2 jars or 1, so I have another jar here just in case. But we might be able to fit all these in 1 jar if I do it smart. If you're enjoying this video, would you consider pressing the like button and maybe even subscribing and hitting the bell so you get notifications about our future videos? That helps others who might like this kind of content find it as well. Thanks so much. We have been making our own ferments for, I want to say it's more than a dozen years. It might be closer to 14 years because my middle child's 14 years old, and I'm trying to calculate in my brain when we actually started, but it was back in our first house, and we started, goodness, I want to say 16 years ago, with making our own homemade yogurt, and we made sourdough. Now we are mostly gluten-free family. Half our kids cannot have gluten at all. So I've experimented with gluten-free sourdough, have not actually mastered it, though we make an amazing gluten-free sourdough naan bread and biscuits and pancakes, all from the discard. But we have done lots of different adventures in fermenting. As I said, the garlic scapes are one of my very favorite, but we grow cabbage for the purpose of making fermented sauerkraut. We have done radishes. I've done lots of garlic. Obviously, we've done dill pickles. That's a pretty staple one if you're gonna do old-fashioned ferments. I've done carrots before. What else? We've done kombucha. We do a lot of kombucha. We're on a little bit of a break just because it has been way too busy around here, but I can't wait to have kombucha again. My favorite flavor is when my husband makes a guava one. That one is really good. We have done fermented honey, garlic honey, specifically garlic honey. We used to do water kefir, but that one wasn't my favorite, so I just gave that one up for a while. We did milk kefir for a while as well. Just so many different ways that you can add probiotics into your diet. And part of the reason I started doing ferments is not just for the flavor, it was really for the nutrition, because when you look up trying to buy probiotics for a family of 9, that gets really pricey. It gets really pricey even to do ferments, to buy them for one person. So the most cost-effective way for me to get nutrition for my family was to make it myself. And it's really special when it's something that we grew ourselves and then we also got to ferment ourselves. That doesn't always happen. It's not an ideal world. So, last year my cucumbers, they didn't do the greatest. So I actually got cucumbers from a neighbor. I bought some cucumbers. I did some of my pickles that way. I think it's worth making, even if you can't do all the steps by yourself. If you can do part of it, it's really great to have something that you made that can feed your family and that can taste wonderful. It can store well. Technically ferments don't have to be stored in the fridge. They would indefinitely get more and more sour if you don't store them in the fridge. But I went to a field trip at a local historical old town. It was a mining town, and they have the old general store there, and they have a barrel of pickles that have been there, I think they said for 100 years. Now, I wouldn't eat them now, but they are not moldy. They're totally preserved. Fermentation is actually, really works. Refrigeration wasn't even always a thing. I mean, it's not even that long ago in history that people didn't really have much refrigeration because they didn't have much electricity, and they would do big ice boxes or root cellars and that kind of stuff to try to keep things cool, but fermentation was relied on a lot. So I know to some people it can feel a little scary, like it's a big science experiment, maybe something's gonna explode, but fermentation is actually age-old wisdom and something that is nice to bring back into our day-to-day for those of us who maybe didn't grow up with it. Okay, so I have these completely full. Now I am going to put 2 tablespoons of real salt. I buy it in bulk and I just put it back in this Costco container. It's not actually the Costco one. And I'm going to mix it into a quart of filtered water. That's pretty much the ratio that I use for these. Now, how long do I actually have it sit in the cupboard? I have it in the cupboard for, I would say it's safe to use it a week, but sometimes I forgot it up to 6 weeks and it's still good. I actually like it more fermented, so anywhere from a week to 6 weeks. You can taste test it and see if it's to the fermentation level that you like and do a little longer, a little shorter. So I would say anywhere from a week to 6 weeks. You just taste it, you decide if it's the type of tanginess you like, or if you want a little more, a little less. It's totally up to you. I'm gonna mix this in. Another thing I learned about fermenting is sometimes if you try to take it too early in the ferment, it might taste saltier. If it ferments longer, the ferment will use up that salt and it won't be so salty. So that's another thing maybe you're gonna taste test for and see if that's at the level that you like as well. Okay, the minerals don't completely mix in. So I'm gonna pour this in and see if we need more or less of our brine. We call this a salt brine. We need a little bit more. Okay, I'm gonna need a little more filtered water, put a little bit more salt, and top this off. Okay, I'm gonna do about 8 ounces more water, so about 1/2 tablespoon of salt. You wanna make sure whatever your vegetables or fruits that you're fermenting is actually submerged in the water. If you have it too full, which I might have it a little too full here. Okay, so I'm gonna close the clamp jar. I have the water right here to this level. It's a little full. What I do in the cupboard is I put it on top of like a small salad plate. That way, if my ferments bubble over, which often they do, it doesn't make a mess on my cupboard like shelf or anything. And as I said, I've never had explosions. This thing is key. I want to know in the comments if you've ever tried to ferment with clamp jars with rubber gaskets. I'm telling you, I think your fermenting life is going to be changed. I can't do things that are high maintenance, babysitting kind of things. I can do something easy like this. Fermenting garlic scapes, our favorite way to eat garlic scapes. It's that simple, and really to make any kind of fermented veggie, it is that simple. I would love to put up more videos about fermentation. It's one of the favorite things that we do. And so look for those as the summer goes on, but also I hope that you have some bravery and courage to try fermenting because it is good for you, it is delicious, and it's a great, inexpensive way of food preservation. If you enjoy this video, I have one where I show you how I make my hot sauce. We love hot sauce so much. It's one of our very favorite things we do, and we also ferment the peppers for that. So I will see you over there. Thanks for joining me. I'll see you soon.